US President Joe Biden has been sworn in as the 46th President of the United States, and he has already laid the plan for the next 100 days. Hello and a very warm welcome to WION VOA co-production, a special presentation on US politics. I'm Akanksha Swaroop. Now, on his first full day in office on Thursday, US President Joe Biden rolled out his national pandemic strategy that includes several executive actions related to vaccinations and even testing. VOA's White House correspondent Patsy Widakuswara has more on the new administration's efforts to combat the coronavirus at home and around the world.
With more than 405,000 American deaths, on Thursday, President Joe Biden launched his plan to combat the pandemic.
Our national strategy is comprehensive. It's based on science, not politics. It's based on truth, not denial, and it's detailed. This next one is setting up the pandemic testing board.
Biden signed a series of executive actions, including a national mask mandate, testing and quarantine requirements for travelers, support to reopen schools, and protection for essential workers.
This is a wartime undertaking. Today, I'm signing an executive action to use the Defense Production Act and all other available authorities to direct all federal agencies and private industry to accelerate the making of everything that needs to protect, test, vaccinate, and take care of our people.
The U.S. is also mending ties with the global health community. White House Chief Medical Advisor Dr. Anthony Fauci on Thursday announced the U.S. is rejoining the World Health Organization and supporting the global effort to combat the pandemic.
The United States to join COVAX and support the ACT Accelerator to advance multilateral efforts for COVID-19 vaccine, therapeutic, and diagnostic distribution, equitable access, and research and development.
COVAX is a 92-nation vaccine collaboration rejected by then-President Trump in line with his America First vaccine strategy. The approach is criticized by those who point out that the virus knows no borders.
Ultimately, at the end of the day, other countries and our partners to ensure their stability and for our national security and economic interests, it's really important that we help as many countries as we can.
The renewed support and resumption of funding for WHO marks a departure from the Trump administration, who often criticized the global agency for its pandemic response.
This is a good day for WHO and a good day for global health.
More than 17 million Americans have received COVID-19 vaccines. The Biden administration is now focused on delivering 100 million shots in the first 100 days. Patsy Widakuswara, VOA News.
Insight into the latest developments as far as Joe Biden's inauguration and his joining is concerned. I'm joined in by Patsy Widakuswara herself, who's joining us live on the broadcast today from Washington, D.C. A very warm welcome to you, Patsy. Now, the president's move to rejoin the World Health Organization and COVAX, the global vaccine initiative, is indeed a sharp departure from Donald Trump's America First vaccination strategy. What was the reason for this?
Well, I think the move definitely reflects the broader difference of approach from the Biden administration compared to the Trump administration. As we know, as you mentioned, Trump administration is very much America first. There are now some concerns that America first has evolved to America alone. And that's why Joe Biden's administration really wants to focus on returning to the global stage, returning to multilateralism, returning to working together with other countries to achieve that goal, whatever that goal may be, including in terms of vaccinations. There's also this sense that in terms of geopolitical strategy, China right now is very much, amped up in their vaccine diplomacy. India, I understand as well, is helping other countries with vaccines. So there's a sense that the U.S. does not want to be left behind, wants to return to having a voice on the table, if not the leader of the table, in a number of global issues. And this is certainly the biggest global issue that the world is facing right now, the pandemic and vaccination.
As Patsy just mentioned, it is important for the United States to take a lead because, as we've seen, China has already been taking the global lead as far as the coronavirus pandemic is concerned. She also quoted India, which has, of course, been distributing vaccines to its neighbors as part of its neighborhood first policy. And today is the day when India has also begun its commercial export on vaccines. And that is why it is of prime importance that US also takes the lead as far as vaccine distribution is concerned. And just to refresh our memory, former US Vice President Joseph R. Biden was only inaugurated on Wednesday, becoming the 46th President of the United States. As VOA's congressional correspondent Catherine Gibson reports, he took the oath of office in an inauguration unlike any other in American history. Here's the report.
The President-elect of the United States.
The power of the U.S. presidency was peacefully transferred Wednesday amid unprecedented security.
I, Joseph Robinette Biden Jr., do solemnly swear.
Democrat Joseph R. Biden, Barack Obama's former vice president, became the 46th president of the United States, standing on the steps of a building that was attacked exactly 2 weeks ago by supporters of former President Donald Trump. Biden sending a clear message about the assault and the efforts to overturn his election.
Democracy is precious. Democracy is fragile. And at this hour, my friends, democracy has prevailed.
He then called on the country to move forward together.
Politics doesn't have to be a raging fire, destroying everything in its path. Every disagreement doesn't have to be a cause for total war. And we must reject the culture in which facts themselves are manipulated and even manufactured.
Biden assumes the presidency facing multiple crises, among them the coronavirus pandemic that has killed 400,000 Americans. He will be assisted by Vice President Kamala Harris.
The duties of the office upon which I am about to enter.
So help me God.
So help me God.
The first woman in U.S. history to hold that office, as well as the first woman of color and Indian American. Traditional inauguration festivities were muted for security reasons and also to observe pandemic safety protocols. Hundreds of thousands of flags decorated the National Mall where people would have stood. And a record 25,000 National Guard troops were on hand to prevent any further security breaches. Protests were limited.
The end is near.
In a first in modern presidential history, President Trump chose not to attend the ceremony or welcome his successor to the White House. Vice President Mike Pence taking his place instead. But Biden had a message to Trump's supporters.
Take a measure of me and my heart. And if you still disagree, so be it. That's democracy. That's America. The right to dissent peaceably.
Biden assumes the presidency backed by a Democratic-controlled U.S. Senate and House, a powerful partner in his first-term agenda to combat climate change, pass immigration reform, and to rebuild America's image abroad. Catherine Gibson, VOA News, Washington.
Fortunately, we have reconnected with Patsy as she's back with us. Patsy, despite Biden's inauguration message of unity, in only a few days, we have already seen the political division in Congress. We also see a sharp departure between the Biden administration and his predecessor. Can you explain the polarization as well as some of the early actions that President Joe Biden has taken that are in direct contradiction of policies under Donald Trump's?
You're absolutely right, Akansha. I mean, the message of unity that Joe Biden presented in his speech at the inauguration, some people called it naive, thinking that how can you talk about unity when, in fact, you have two factions within the Senate and the House of Representatives, as well as the entire country at odds with each other. And we can see this kind of polarization and sharp division starting to brew in the Senate, where now Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, I'm sorry, I'm still having to get used to with the different power dynamics now. The top Republican in the Senate, who's now the minority leader, Mitch McConnell, has signaled that even though he is open to impeachment hearings, this is, of course, as you know, the House of Representatives has released articles of impeachment to punish President Donald Trump, and the charge is inciting an insurrection on January 6th. Now, Mitch McConnell is asking the Democrats to delay impeachment hearings to mid-February in order to provide President Trump and his legal team time to prepare. Now, the Democrats are obviously not happy about this. They feel like this is going to gum up all the other legislative agenda. So there's definitely polarization there, starting with what to do with President Trump. But in terms of the executive actions, President Biden is not wasting time, and he's really taking all these actions that can be done to overturn all the executive actions that were done by former President Donald Trump. And those include not just the vaccines and pandemic, which we have discussed earlier, but also in terms of immigration, funding for the border wall, stopping deportations, as well as other things, including rejoining the Paris climate change. We've mentioned rejoining the WHO. These are just a series of executive actions that may not have as much weight as legislative actions, but these are actions that the president can do on day one with the wave of his pen, and that's what he's done. So definitely polarization, definitely like the whiplash from one administration to another, and we'll see how this plays out legislatively in the Senate and in the House of Representatives in the weeks ahead.
Right. And since you mentioned polarization, let's also talk about polarization within the country. Biden also revoked Donald Trump's Muslim travel ban and promised legislation on immigration. Tell us more about this, including how Americans are reacting.
Right. So if you remember, under President Donald Trump, there was a travel ban that was applied to a number of Muslim majority countries that was very much condemned by the Democrats as well as activists, saying that it was discrimination, whereas at that time, the administration was saying that this was necessary to protect American security. Now, President Joe Biden has revoked that ban. So now the people from those 13 countries that were part of the Muslim ban, Yemen, Somalia, and other countries, they can now enter the U.S., obviously going through the normal visa procedures. This has been lauded, of course, by Muslim organizations such as the Council of American and Islamic Relations, big Muslim organizations in the U.S., as well as civil rights activists. But obviously, there are people who say that what Joe Biden is doing in terms of relaxing these immigration laws through his executive action is endangering the country, as well as his actions on the border wall to stop funding to the border wall. Now, in terms of legislative actions, one of the first things that Joe Biden is presenting to Congress is a bill on immigration, which would provide a pathway to millions of immigrants who are in the U.S. without documentation, a path to legal immigration, legal citizenship. Now, obviously, this has been welcomed by diaspora from all over the world, including the Indian diaspora in the U.S. But we will see. This is a big ask from the Biden administration, and with a very slim majority, both in the House of Representatives and in the Senate, there may not be much political capital to spend on this. But this is definitely something that the Biden administration wants to try.
Right. And as you rightly mentioned, of course, it's going to have an impact with various diasporas, including the Indian diaspora, and of course, many Indians over here as well. Having said that, thank you so much, Patsy, for bringing us all those inputs from the United States. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.